And away we go. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Thank you for being here and participating. We're starting a brand new Go show. This one, just from the get-go, is going to be a meaty one. It's not very long, but it covers a large range of things we've been talking about for quite some time. So I'll be interjecting a lot, so that may make this Go show longer than it would seem. It's only a few pages. But the title might... I already have controversy with the title, so as it's been translated, the title is On Offering Prayers to the Mandala of the Wonderful and Difficult to Understand Law. And right away, you know how I feel about that Western term. It's very misleading. I would change it to On Offering Meditations to the Mandala of the Wonderful and Difficult to Understand Law, or On Chanting the Daimoku to the Mandala of the Wonderful and Difficult to Understand Law. That would seem more in keeping with Nichiren right there. But just in the title, I have to say, what this Go show is about is our practice of chanting Daimoku to Gohonzon. Gohonzon, as we've covered many times, is not that scroll. That scroll is a mundane image to remind us to focus our mind on Gohonzon within us. What is Gohonzon within us? It is the Dharma. It is all of the teachings of Buddhism, as well as the experience of the teachings of Buddhism, as well as the experience of the meaning of Buddhism, which is essentially the meaning that we develop our path to develop our Buddha wisdom. So that's all that is behind me. It's something to help us focus on something which is innate within us. That's Gohonzon. So that's just a tool behind me. No one can own that. No authoritarian descendants of priests, monks, or special gurus, or whatever you want to call them, has the authority to give me one once I qualify for it, or to take it away. That Gohonzon, that scroll, is a gift from Nichiren, which is a gift from Shakyamuni and all of Buddhism, to use as the most expedient tool to awaken our own Gohonzon, our own Buddha nature, our Buddha-ness. Nobody else owns that, only you do. That's yours to open. Buddhism is a method. It's not a religion, it's a method for you to open that which you already have. Become aware of it, awaken to it. So prayer doesn't really fit, does it? So I'd like to strike that word, and I'm going to edit this book and clean it up from all of those. So don't purchase this book yet from me online. I still have a lot of work to do to clean up the rhetoric, as I continue to do. So this is about how we work with this tool that we have. So let's get into it. I have offered Daimoku to the Gohonzon of Myoho Renge Kyo. Though this mandala has but 5 or 7 characters, notice he says it very clearly. This is translated, yes, but it's translated through scholarship as 5 or 7 characters, not 6. Not Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, Nam Mu Myoho Renge Kyo. He's very specific about this over and over and over again. 5 or 7 characters. He never says 6. He never abbreviates the Dharma. Oh my God. Yeah, I have my Buddha-ness, but I use the short version. What? What nonsense is that? What organization thought it was smart to claim superiority by shortening Buddha-ness, your Buddhahood? Let's just shorten it. Let's make it ours. What is that? Okay. So he says he's offered Daimoku to the Gohonzon of what? Myoho Renge Kyo. Though this mandala has but 5 or 7 characters, it is the teacher of all Buddhas throughout the 3 existences and the seal that guarantees the enlightenment of all women. So, what he's saying, again, is that this is the ultimate teaching of the entire breadth of Buddhism. This isn't some special sect or some special chapter that stands alone and aside from all the other teachings. It is the quintessential practice of everything, the whole of the teachings. So this path, this awakening of that Gohonzon, the Buddha-ness, is what Shakyamuni did. What all people who have realized their Buddha-ness, their Buddha nature, their Buddhahood, whatever label you want to put on it, the Dharma. Myoho Renge Kyo is the Dharma, the engine of the Dharma, if you will. And he points out uniquely in the Lotus that this includes all women. It does not discriminate. Buddha-ness is Buddha-ness. It has no sex. Or for that matter, no humanness. It is for sentient and insentient beings, but that's a subject for another go show. It will be a lamp, he continues, in the darkness of the road to the next world, and a fine horse to carry you over the mountains of death. Mountains of death. Why are there plural mountains of death? Because life and death is a constant occurrence. Moment to moment, we live this lifespan, this lifetime, through successive, incalculable births and deaths from moment to moment. It is like the sun and moon in the heavens or Mount Sumera on earth. Don't pass by that simile so quickly. What is true about the sun and moon is that, at one time it is said by archaeologists and paleontologists and historians that the Egyptians, thousands of years ago, viewed the sun as a god or a pharaoh as associated with that god, and that god would carry the sun over the sky and it would disappear at night, and so they wouldn't be afraid that it would never return. They invented a story that said that this god, this pharaoh, Ra, would bring that sun back around to come up in the sky again the following day in so many hours or whatever. I don't know if they used the word day, but that the cycle of the sun reappearing was due to a special entity. We know now that we simply rotate and we also orbit the sun. Same with the moon. But imagine if we saw the moon one night in the sky and it was the first time we'd ever seen it, and then it disappeared. What would go through your head if you weren't aware of the way the solar system works? Or the sun, for that matter. It would be terrifying when the sun disappears and it's dark, pitch dark, and you're like, what the heck is going on? Right? And then it reappears the next day and you think, well, me crying in fear overnight must have pleaded with it to reappear, and it worked. That kind of thing. So if Myoho Renge Kyo is the engine of Buddhahood, then it is like the moon and sun in the heavens. In other words, it's sure to return. It rhythmically comes back. It's always there. Just because you don't see it doesn't mean it doesn't continue to exist. That's the point. It is a ship to ferry people over the sea of sufferings of birth and death. There it is again. How do we conduct a day? We measure the cycle of the sun and moon, and we know they're always there, and they return, and it guides the way we engage in our life, right? So with Buddhahood, Myoho Renge Kyo, we're guided through every moment, every birth and death, moment to moment in our lives. It is a ship, I just read that. It is the teacher who leads all people to Buddhahood and enlightenment. So what does teacher mean here, Myoho Renge Kyo? It's the Buddha wisdom. It's the wisdom that we acquire from study and our own insights to lead us to our Buddhahood, our Buddha-ness. That's the teacher. Once again, we teach ourselves Buddha wisdom. How do we teach ourselves? Myoho Renge Kyo, Daimoku to the Gohanzan, which is actually within our lives, our own Buddha-ness. See how circular all of this is? This great mandala has never been yet propagated anywhere in Jambudvipa in the more than 2,220 years since the Buddha's passing. Consider that for a moment. Okay, so here I want to continue. This mandala has never yet been propagated anywhere in Jambudvipa in the more than 2,220 years since the Buddha's passing. I want you to think about what this means. This Gohanzen does not exist as the scroll. And the words that Nichiren uses says, this great mandala. He doesn't say this Gohanzen. He says this great mandala has never yet been propagated anywhere. So I'm going to touch on something that I've answered in emails and I've talked about before, but in this Go Show, I think it's super appropriate. You know, I'm a bit fond of repeating that this Buddhahood is yours. It's not anyone else's to give you. It's not anyone else's to hold from you. It's not that authoritarian nightmare. Now think, if you will, this Gohanzen is something that is actually your Buddha wisdom to awaken to your Buddhahood. That's what Myoho Renge Kyo is. That's what the Daimoku is, and that's what Gohanzen is a representation of. Representation in your own mind. It doesn't belong to anyone else. Nichiren offered this to everyone as Shakyamuni's wish to bring enlightenment as potential to anyone, no matter what your education, caste, economic reality, whatever. It's completely egalitarian because it already exists. It already exists within all of us. All we need is a method, a tool, a way to awaken it for ourselves, because each of us gets to it in our own unique way. We share a lot of similarities, but our Buddhahood is our Buddhahood. Your Buddhahood is your Buddhahood. So how can somebody other than you actually accomplish it, awaken it, experience it? It can't. So Nichiren creates this mandala to represent, to give you a focal object, to represent the Dharma that you can awaken in yourself, a perfect mirror, if you will. But the mirror is not you, is it? It's just a mirror. It's a tool for you to see you. So this is a mirror for you to see your enlightenment. So it's a really cool mandala. It's a great mandala. It's never been around before, Nichiren. But it is free for you to use. Now, in Nichiren's day, they didn't have cell phones. They didn't have computers. They didn't have printers. They didn't have internet. They didn't have telephones. They didn't even have really mail to speak of, or electronic mail as we know it. The only way you could communicate with other people, your ideas, thoughts, and concepts, was verbally, or if you were educated enough to know how to read, if you were further educated enough to know how to write, and you could afford the materials, you could write things down. And you could have those sent by horseback or hand to hand and distribute them. It's a slow mode of getting the word out, right? So in those days, like for thousands of years, what we call concerts with bands these days is basically what they did. They traveled to promote these ideas, these thoughts, and occasionally wrote stuff down and shared that with others, right? So what is the great mandala? The great mandala is great because it is a mandala that works for everyone in Jambudvipa. In other words, all of humanity, which was Shakyamuni's goal to begin with. And Nichiren creates it in Sumi ink, characterized by his own enlightenment, what the image of the Gohonzon in your life, your Buddha wisdom, can reflect. This is a representation of the Dharma for you to experience, and thereby awakening it in your own life. This is not to be distributed lightly, but it's not to be kept from you either. Remember, everywhere in here, and I've read it several times, propagated everywhere, abroad and locally, right? This is the whole point in the latter day, to get this teaching out there. Well, in the latter day, we now have internet, we now have printers, we now can buy stuff online anywhere in the world. So, I say to you, this is why I practice with a Gohonzon that is a identical digital copy of one inscribed by Nichiren himself, not by some organization or some other monk who put his name on it and his date on it, or her. No women so far that I know of. I don't want those mandalas. I want the mandala. I want the mandala with Nichiren's life condition in the ink. I want the mandala, the great mandala that he invented, that he created, so that all of us could practice. Now, that's what I want for myself. I'm selfish. I want the best one. But I'm also doing my bodhisattva practice. And my bodhisattva practice says, everyone I contact should have access to this same best one. Even people that I don't know. I want to follow in Nichiren's footsteps, in Shakyamuni's footsteps. Not arrogantly, I'm just a guy. But this is my thinking. It shouldn't have to go through some trial and error, some testing, are you good enough? Yep, are you good enough? If Buddhahood is universal and everybody has it, it is just an ability we need to develop, then how can anyone, let alone me, say, I don't think you're ready? Baloney! It's already there. How crazy is that? So I went on a website, www.cafepress.com, cafepress.com, cafepress.com/Gohonzon. Anyone in the world, no matter what language you speak, you can go to cafepress.com/Gohonzon, Gohon as in Nancy, Z or Z, O-N as in Nancy, Gohonzon, and go get yourself one. The exact Gohonzon, well, the digital copy of the mandala that Nichiren created to awaken our Gohonzon. Go get it. Start. Do it today. Right? It's not about me. You're the authority. You're the Buddha-ness. I'm not getting in the way of that. I'm going to do my best to make sure you get one. without having to go through some weird ritual whatever in order to get one. You don't need that. All you need to do is chant Namu Myoho Renge Kyo, put your we call it Gohanzan, but it is a mandala of Gohanzan. Put it in a place that it'll be safe because it represents your Gohanzan. That's your ultimate self. Don't you want to protect it? Right? That's what the altar is all about. It's what a Butsudan is meant to be, to protect your life condition. Set it up, get the distractions off your wall and other stuff. I know I have some sound things going up there so I can do these videos. I'm hoping I'll find a better way at one point so I have nothing around it, because it's distracting no matter what it is. So that's my bit on Gohanzan, on the Great Mandala. Nichiren validates this thinking constantly when I read it. And it really upsets me when there are arrogant organizations and sects out there who think that they somehow can lord over it. Now, on the other side, in Nichiren's day, he had to be sure that people got the right mandala, the great mandala, the one that he created. So he developed a system of copying and spreading through organizations, his direct descendants and so forth, his organizations, to get those Gohanzans or those mandalas in the hands of practitioners who wanted to practice the Dharma. So there was a reason why there was a sort of a system of handing these scrolls out, because that's all they had. But we don't have that problem today. We have the internet. We have retailers who will just stamp stuff out exactly the way they got it. No one editing, no one putting their own little egomaniacal signature on it. It's the same one. And all of us can practice with a Nichiren inscribed Gohanzan mandala. I keep correcting myself because the habit is ingrained. This is the mandala of the Gohanzan. So let's say it correctly, okay? Moving on. The prescription of medicine differs according to the illness, right? A slight ailment can be treated with ordinary medicine, like an aspirin, but for grave illnesses, an elixir should be used, something more complex. During the more than 2,220 years since the Buddha's passing, the people's illnesses of earthly desires and negative karma were not serious, and a succession of wise men appeared in order to act as physicians and dispense medicine appropriately as these illnesses required. You know, doctor, it hurts when I do this. Well, don't do that. Right? Simple. These men came from the Dharma Analysis Treasury School, the Establishment of Truth School, the Precepts Dharma Characteristics, the Treatises School, as well as the True Word, Flower Garland, Tendai, Pure Land, and Zen School. So, earlier teachings, they were provisional. So, people, now he's equating illnesses to life condition, right? And there were a lot of teachers to handle simple life condition problems. Each of these schools prescribed its own medicine. For example, the Flower Garland School set forth the principle of the 6 forms and the 10 mysteries. The Three Treatises School advocated the middle path of the 8 negations. The Dharma Characteristics School stressed the perception that all phenomena derived from consciousness only. The Precepts School upheld the 250 precepts. The Pure Land School invoked the name of Amida Buddha, Nembutsu. The Zen School expounded the perceiving one's true nature and attaining Buddhahood. The True Word School propounded the meditation on the 5 elements, and the Tendai School taught the doctrine of the 3,000 realms in a single moment of life. Now, however, we have entered the latter day of the law, and the medicines of these various schools no longer cure the people's illnesses. Moreover, all the Japanese have become ichantikas and people of grave slander. Their offense is even worse than that of killing one's father or mother, fomenting a rebellion. That just happened last Wednesday. That's weird. Or causing a Buddha to bleed. Japan is filled with individuals whose respective offenses exceed even those of one who were to gouge out the eyes of all the human beings of a major world system, or raise all the temples and pagodas in the world of the 10 directions. Consequently, the heavenly deities glare down furiously upon our nation day after day, while the earthly deities tremble in continual rage. Nevertheless, all the people of our day believe themselves to be without fault, and none doubt that they will be reborn in the Pure Land or attain Buddhahood. So this is the illness that he's been talking about. Arrogance. Just the inability to see the preciousness of all life and what we know in this mundane existence as other, which isn't really other, right? We talked about this. My last little walking meditation video on, well, it's also part of a Gosho reading on oneness, mindfulness. What is time, right? So people are blind to this now in this latter age. This is why Nichiren created the great Mandala, to get everybody the most powerful, most easy to use, most easy to swallow medicine with the most efficacy to immediately erase and correct our living path with our Buddha nature. The blind cannot see or know the shining sun, and someone who is sound asleep will not feel even an earthquake that is reverberating like a great drum. So too is it with all the people of Japan who do not realize their own offenses. The offenses committed by the men are heavier than those committed by the women. In like manner, the nuns' offenses are heavier than the laymen's, and the priests more serious than the nuns. Among the priests, head monks, the offenses of those who observe the precepts are worse than those of monks who violate them, and those of learned priests or monks are graver still. Such monks are like those with white leprosy among lepers, and among those with white leprosy the most malignant. Then what great physician or what efficacious medicine can cure the illnesses of all people in the latter day of the law? They cannot be cured by the mudras and mantras of the Thus Come One Mahavarachana, the 48 vows of the Thus Come One Amida, or the 12 great vows of the Thus Come One Medicine Master. Not even his pledge to heal all ills. Not only do such medicines fail to cure these illnesses, they aggravate them all the more because they mislead you. They mislead you from the true Dharma. Shakyamuni Buddha, the Lord of Teachings, brought together the Thus Come One many treasures and all the emanation Buddhas of the 10 directions and left one elixir, the 5 characters of Myoho Renge Kyo. For the people of the latter day of the law, he refused to entrust it to any of the bodhisattvas such as Dharma Wisdom, Forest of Merits, Vajrasattva, Universal Worthy, Manjushri, Medicine King, and Perceiver of the World Sounds, let alone to Mahakshyapa, Shariputra, or any of the other persons of the 2 vehicles, learning and realization. Rather, there were 4 great bodhisattvas, including superior practices, who had been disciples of the Thus Come One Shakyamuni since he first attained Buddhahood. Numberless major world systems, dust particles, kalpas ago. Not even for a moment had they ever forgotten the Buddha. Shakyamuni summoned these great bodhisattvas and transferred Myoho Renge Kyo to them. Of course, he's talking about the bodhisattvas of the earth, the future generations of bodhisattva. Bodhisattva, why? Because in the Lotus Sutra, this is the practice that we learn. This is the Dharma. A woman who takes this efficacious medicine will be surrounded and protected by these four great bodhisattvas at all times. When she rises to her feet, she too will be the bodhisattvas. So too will the bodhisattvas. And when she walks along the road, they will also do the same. She and they will be as inseparable as a body and its shadow, as fish and water, as a voice and its echo, or as the moon and its light. Should these four great bodhisattvas desert the woman who chants Namu Myoho Renge Kyo, they would incur the wrath of Shakyamuni, many treasures, and the emanations of Buddhas in the 10 directions. You may be certain that their offense would be greater than even that of Devadatta, their falsehood more terrible than Kokalika's. How reassuring, how encouraging. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. There's no date or recipient on this letter. There's all kinds of information in here. All right. So that was that Gosho. Thank you for sticking with me through it. I hope that I dispelled any doubts that you might have on your proper practice. I hope that you at least get from this Nichiren's spirit of egalitarianism, the spirit of all Buddhism since Shakyamuni started teaching it, is that there is no difference between you and me, your mom or your sister, your brothers, your colors, your cultures, the globe. All of us can attain the same Buddha-ness through our own individuated path. That's what a self is. We are individuations of this whole. The whole is Buddhahood. The whole is Dharma. How do you experience the whole without the entirety? Not a hole as in a black hole, but the entirety of the life and its process. The only thing keeping you from it, makes sense, doesn't it, is your own obstacles of attachments to things. That takes you away from this knowledge, this experience. You don't have to get rid of all this stuff. You just have to stop being attached to it like it's super important. It enables you. Everything is a tool, but it should all be commanded from the place where life itself is precious. If it doesn't affirm the preciousness of life, then it is an obstacle. That's the reason for this great mandala, and that is why I use this particular great mandala, because it is of Nichiren's own hand. It isn't sullied by any authoritarian groups or organizations. And that's what I practice to. That's what I use to awaken my Gohonzon, my Buddha-ness. That's exactly what you should do. Because it's in your hands. It's up to you. Sorry. To do or not to do. No, try. Do or not do. It's my best Yoda impression. Oh, I'm so silly. Anyway, I hope this helps you. I hope you're doing well and staying healthy. Please keep your practice strong. I'll see you in the next one. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Thank you.